People get defensive over small things because human social cognition is not designed to process interaction as neutral data exchange, but as a continuous evaluation of position, legitimacy, and symbolic safety within a perceived hierarchy, which means that even minor remarks are unconsciously scanned for implications about status, competence, and belonging, rather than interpreted solely on their literal content. From a psychological and evolutionary perspective, the defensive reaction represents a rapid regulatory mechanism whose function is to preserve coherence of identity under conditions of perceived social exposure, because in ancestral environments, subtle cues of disapproval often preceded exclusion or loss of protection, training the nervous system to prioritize immediate containment over reflective analysis. This mechanism operates below conscious reasoning, shifting control from deliberative cognitive systems to threat-oriented regulatory circuits, which explains why defensiveness appears disproportionate, automatic, and resistant to logic, since its objective is not accuracy or mutual understanding, but the stabilization of the self-concept before it is forced into revision. Modern social structures intensify this response by embedding individuals in environments where value is continuously measured through performance, productivity, and comparative evaluation, thereby conditioning people to experience even small deviations or questions as signals that their social credibility may be at risk, rather than as isolated or context-dependent feedback. As a result, defensive behavior follows a predictable pattern in which immediate justification reasserts competence, denial blocks implication, escalation converts analysis into conflict where power replaces scrutiny, and questioning intent delegitimizes the source of threat, all of which serve to terminate inspection rather than resolve disagreement. Individuals do not become defensive in all domains, but specifically in areas where their self-concept remains unresolved, because accepting the implication of a comment in such domains would require structural modification of identity that the system is not prepared to perform under pressure, making resistance the fastest route to internal stability. On a sociological level, repeated defensiveness reshapes interpersonal dynamics by training others to reduce honesty, soften critique, and avoid certain topics altogether, producing a controlled social environment that minimizes friction while simultaneously depriving the individual of corrective feedback necessary for adaptation and growth. This creates a reinforcing loop in which avoidance from others confirms the individual's perception of threat, strengthens reliance on defensive strategies, and gradually lowers the threshold at which minor stimuli trigger protective responses, transforming defensiveness from a situational reaction into a stable behavioral pattern. Attempts to reduce defensiveness through reassurance or softened communication fail because they do not alter the underlying threat model, and in many cases they reinforce it by teaching the system that strong reactions successfully regulate the social environment and prevent further challenge. Meaningful change occurs only through repeated exposure to evaluative situations in which identity is not catastrophically compromised, allowing the nervous system to recalibrate its threat sensitivity and reclassify ambiguity and critique as tolerable inputs rather than dangerous inputs. Until that recalibration occurs at a physiological and social level rather than a purely cognitive one, defensiveness remains the default strategy, not because individuals lack maturity or emotional control, but because their psychological and social systems have been optimized to treat even small disruptions as potential risks to continuity of self.